According to one USC insider, unofficially, it's official. Gary Patterson is going to be USC's next defensive coordinator.
You are Locked On USC, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone, and welcome to Locked On USC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, also your number one sports podcast network. Whether you're watching the show on YouTube, wherever you want to download the podcast, you get to pick the platform. This show is going to be free. This show will always appreciate your support. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, welcome back to another episode of Locked On USC. I'm your host, Mark Kulkin, credentialed media member who also covers the USC Trojans. I also write for the WeAreSC.com website. I've actually had two sources confirm it's a done deal. In fact, it was supposed to be announced on Monday, the beginning of the week. Thanks again for making Locked On USC your first listen. One of these sources is actually associated with the team very closely. The other one just said, hey, Mark, Coach Gary Patterson, he's the guy. Now that Lincoln Riley has apparently settled on his next defensive coordinator, let's talk about Gary Patterson's bona fides, his accolades. What does he bring to the table? First question, I want everyone to ask themselves this question. Why did Coach Riley finally decide after weeks, it's been weeks of vetting, doing a thorough search, why did he decide that Gary Patterson is the right guy to turn USC's defense into something that actually resembles Indiana's defense? By the way, congratulations to the Indiana Hoosiers winning your first national championship. That's one more than the Oregon Ducks program, 10 less than USC's. But I'm going to give them their props in the final segment. That was a really great national championship game, but I digress. We'll talk about that shortly. I have some reasons why Coach Riley identified Gary Patterson. Okay. Oh, and by the way, something else I've learned recently. I was told by a particular source that Gary Patterson was the first guy Coach Riley called. So let's start with some of the reasons, starting with their relationship. Okay. I'm just going to say Coach GP, Coach Riley, they've known each other for years in the Big 12. They coached against each other. Obviously, Coach Riley was at Oklahoma. Gary Patterson, head coach TCU. Gary Patterson, defensive-minded. Lincoln Riley, obviously, offense first, second, and third on the agenda. But because of that professional relationship, I don't think people really understand and give enough credence to the fact that professional relationships, they matter more than people think. That's why coaches like to be familiar with their assistant coaches. Talk about that here in a minute. Another reason why Coach Riley identified Gary Patterson as the guy, he's got a proven defensive track record. The dude is going into the College Football Hall of Fame for his career accomplishments. He spent 21 years as head coach at TCU. And he's considered one of the best defensive minds in the game, in college football. Just like Lincoln Riley is considered one of the best offensive minds. Coach GP, he earned his respect as one of the top defensive brains out there. His units, when he was at TCU, his defense always ranked among the nation's best, always near the top. He consistently produced. Here's what you like about his defense. They were always disciplined, assignment sound, right? Tackled well. You knew what their base defense was at 4-2-5, but he would disguise his coverages really well. And he was able to adjust on a week-to-week basis based on the personnel. He also has a track record of, being able to go against some high-powered offenses and his defense getting the job done. So, again, you have that track record of what he's been able to accomplish. against those high-powered offenses. And what you never see from his defenses, at least from what my recollection, his guys never look confused or structurally unsound. Maybe that's a great way to put it. And those are a couple of issues that have plagued USC. I mean, let's just be honest about it. There's times you're going, where was that player going? What were they doing? That type of stuff. He's also known for developing defensive backs. Right now, USC's defensive assistant coaching pool, Doug Belk, really good with the safeties. Trojan Reed, cornerbacks coach. Now you're bringing in a defensive coordinator who, much like Danton Lynn, is a defensive backs guy. Here's another reason Coach Riley went in on Coach GP. The scheme obviously fits USC's personnel. That's what they recruited for with Danton Lynn. They run the similar 4-2-5. Gary Patterson. I mean, some people actually give him credit for developing the defense, making it a thing. He's the reason why more and more programs adopted that type of defensive philosophy. The system itself is built around, versatility, playing with speed, being able, as I mentioned, disguising your pressure. And that should match the kind of athletes USC has already recruited, what they have on their roster. I know he likes to blitz from the cornerback position a lot, so I don't know. Hopefully we'll see some of that. Again, hopefully we see a bunch of different type of stuff. Another thing his defenses are known for, controlling the line of scrimmage, limiting big plays, which is exactly, I mean, you couldn't script it out any better. That is exactly what USC needs to balance out its own offense, which is really explosive. Be a defense that can control the line of scrimmage, get off the field, not give up big plays, get the ball back to your own offense. He brings, obviously, experience to the table, 21 years. Excuse me. And he's not just an X's and O's type of guy. He can actually identify, he can evaluate talent. I mean, think about those teams he had at TCU. He was building those teams with lesser talent than his, the other teams in the Big 12. And he was able to develop those guys into NFL draft picks. Another reason I think Lincoln Riley wanted to go after him, he didn't want to shake up his staff that he already has on the roster. Typically most coordinators, defense or offense, they want to bring their own guys in. They want to overhaul the entire defense. I don't think that's going to be necessary with Coach GP. He doesn't need to do that because, he's a strong leader. I think he has that reputation. He's not looking to rebuild a program. Right now, he's coming in to kind of just tweak. If you were looking under the hood to fix USC's defense, he's the mechanic you take it to. He's all right, let's turn this a little bit here, adjust this here, let's tighten up the belt. Make some changes, but not. He's not going to rip out the engine and put a new one in. He's more likely, again, he's going to fit with USC's existing defensive staff. You're going to keep that continuity going, which is a plus, huge plus. So, right now, while the coaching continuity is a positive, I want to really, I want to make sure everybody understands. Okay, I think it's great. It does make me wonder why the announcement took so long. This was Coach Riley's first choice, from what I understand. So it kind of gives you that impression that, all right, well, it kind of feels like we're going to make the announcement once the transfer portal is closed, and it's strategic. Just in case some players decide, you know what, not happy, don't want them, I'm out. Portal's closed. Unless they have already submitted their name to be entered into it, that's your new defensive coordinator, guys, on defense. Accept it, get into it, enjoy it. You have no choice. Neither do I. Not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying at this point, unless something changes, Gary Patterson is going to be USC's next defensive coordinator, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. So with that being said, while I would love to keep the staff together, Coach Henney, Coach Nua, Doug Belk, Rob Ryan, Trovon Reed, I wouldn't be surprised if one or two guys said, you know what, I'm going to go give the NFL a shot. We'll see what happens. Love to be wrong, but I would not be surprised if one or two. Again, there's coaches on this staff that, they have their own aspirations. Some want to be a coordinator, some want to be a head coach. So you understand if they say, you know what, I was probably a good candidate for the job. You passed me by. Let me go explore this opportunity. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everybody stays. Again, wouldn't be surprised. That's all I'm saying. I got a couple more segments to go here. I'm asking it's a rhetorical question. Who would get offended on USC's roster? That's the premise. Who would get offended? I'll tell you what I'm talking about in the next segment. And in segment number 3, got to give props to Indiana football. An amazing job. Love what I watched. That's what I want USC football to look like. Just like that. There is nothing like it in the world. College football, I love college football. The tailgates, the packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all. I would have loved to have been at that national championship game. I mean, the energy, the bands, the moments you're going to remember forever. But sometimes getting tickets, yeah, that's not fun. That part used to be really frustrating. It can be really, really, really frustrating. You got those long queues that you're waiting on. You log in, and all of a sudden you look back at your phone, and you got to log back in because you logged out somehow. And then when you're finally ready to check out, the price jumps right after checkout. It's like, oh, where did all these fees come from? That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences, and you can do it in just a few taps. You'll love being able to see the view from your seat before buying. That way you know exactly what you're getting. And the zone deals stand out. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, you save even more. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms will apply. Again, that's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. I can't say thank you enough for making Locked On USC your first listen. And thank you again for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. This next segment right here, this little 30 seconds here, is for my everydayers. All you guys who like to listen to Locked On USC on your favorite podcast platform. Look, you live USC every day. That's why you're listening to Locked On USC every day. Here's a chance for you to level up. Go ad-free. You can join the Everydayers Club today, and you're going to get Locked On USC with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. And you can get it all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. If you need more information, see the link in the show's description page. I was having a conversation with someone during the national championship game about USC's culture. Good, it's bad, they still working on it, that type of stuff. We were talking about, sometimes it's described as soft, not physical enough. A lot of times people attribute that to, well, it's how you practice. How you practice defense is the type of offense you're going up against. So, also part of the culture, not everyone, kind of being all in when it comes to football. So it was just kind of a wide-ranging thing of what is culture? What does that mean? What's it all about? Well, in my context of this whole discussion, what I mean was, I don't think there's been enough guys on the roster who literally live for football, live, breathe, die. That's it. That's all they want to do. And they practice every single practice like it's life or death. They love it. Maybe the best way to describe it is the Mamba mentality. Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest Lakers ever, maybe the top Laker ever. That's an argument for another day. Anyways, since Lincoln Riley took over, instantly, the first two names I would think of right off the bat, Caleb Williams, Travis Dye. Instantly, those two guys just roll off your tongue when it comes to, they're going to hold guys accountable during practice. I've told the story before about Travis Dye. He likes to tell people they suck. Because if you're not practicing up to your abilities, what you're capable of, you're dragging the team down. I mean, but after those two guys, after Caleb, after Travis Dye, you probably would need a few minutes just to kind of think about it and name some others. Here, let me put this into perfect context. What I'm trying to convey is this. Guys like Brian Cushing, I mean, they would be offended if you did not practice like your life depended on it. That's exactly who on this USC roster right now would be offended because you're not practicing the way you should. Like it means everything. I mean, Brian Cushing, he was the type of guy who would kick your butt until you started practicing and matching his effort, his energy. Same thing with Ray or Clay Matthews. I often talk about how USC needs an Ed Orgeron type of personality on the coaching staff. But what about the players? Who are some of the players on the current roster right now that fall into that category of, they're offended when guys don't practice hard every play? Who would you name? And I'm not talking about guys who talk about it and yell like a Jacoby Lane would yell at his teammates. I mean, guys who will literally fight you if you don't do it. Get in your face, grab you by the face mask, and tell you, you know what? Either you do it the right way or you get off the field. Let somebody else have an opportunity. Who are those guys? Those are the types of things I literally was looking for that I like to observe when the media was allowed to watch practice. It's not why they're fighting, or, well, in some cases it is. But you're looking for that type of, all right, I understand why he's upset. I think a few of the younger players might fall into that category. And I actually think there's a handful in this 2026 class that's coming in. Right off the bat, from the 2026 class. I think Luke Wafel, Elbert Hill, absolutely. They fall into that category. These dudes are intense players. I think a Sean Alston probably falls into that category. Not sure you want to get Tom Tapui mad because you're lollygagging. He's got a bad attitude. That's all right. I want that from my interior defensive lineman. I want dudes with bad attitudes. I also think Brandon Lockhart. I think he's one of those guys who will tell people in a more Travis Dye type of way, you suck. Get your ish together. Practice up to your potential. I think Madden Reardon can grow into something like that. And I don't mean physically. I just mean into that role. All right, hit me up in the comments. Hit me up in the comments. Who on the current roster would be offended by guys taking advantage of the privilege to play for USC? I'm not trying to say we need to go back to the days of Pete Carroll, how they used to practice. Curt Cignetti's Indiana Hoosiers have proven you don't need to do that. But they sure as hell play physical football. There are different ways to go about it, but there's no doubt about that. I mean, when Pete Carroll was USC's head coach, the players always talked about how practices were more difficult than the games. Well, from my understanding, Curt Cignetti, their practices are pretty much walk-through pace, and they save their physicality for the game. That's a physical football team. So again, who on the current roster, who in the incoming 2026 class do you think would be offended if they saw one of their teammates, I don't want to say lollygagging, but not practicing at 100%? A lot of this has to do with players coming in and saying, well, I'm paid. I got mine. Well, here's another one I would throw from the 2026 class. Brett Polajay. He ain't. I've talked about him on the show before. He's going to be one of those dudes. I think this 2026 class has exactly the type of personalities I'm talking about. So hit me up in the comments. Who on the current roster, 2026 excluded, you can give me some names if you want from there, but on the current roster, who else? Who else? All right. Time to give credit where credit is due. Congratulations, Indiana. I want USC football to emulate. I want them to look and play like that football team that I just watched win the national championship. Talk about that coming up. Say it again. That's what I want USC football to look like. Indiana plays football the right way. I mean, first of all, they're fearless. They don't beat themselves. They are fundamentally sound on both sides of the ball. In fact, they play at the same level in all three phases of the game. How many of you how many of you watched that national championship game? Shame on you if you didn't watch it. Shame on you. It was a really good game. It was a great second half. I mean, at the end of the first half, I said, you know what? I don't know if Miami's going to score on Indiana. Miami made their adjustments at halftime, turned into a really good game. Really, really fun game to watch. But like I said, Indiana, they play extremely well in all three phases. Special teams blocked a punt for a touchdown. I mean, they are the perfect complementary style football team. Not the reason why they blocked the punt for the touchdown, but it was set up because Miami's Malachi Toney, really dynamic young player, he fielded a punt inside the 5-yard line. Mistake number one. You are taught, stand on the 10-yard line. If the ball is going over your head, you take the chance, you let it, you take your chances. Typically, the ball is going to bounce into the end zone. Well, he backpedaled to the 5, took the ball, and tried to make something happen. I get it. We see that happen all the time with young players. But Indiana, they covered the kick perfectly. And after a couple of downs, 3 and out, it set up the punt block. Touchdown. So, yeah, I mean, the Hoosiers defense did their job. Special teams came and said, all right, our turn. Kurt Cignetti, as far as personality, he is the anti-Pete Carroll. When it comes to personality and energy, they're 180 degrees. Don't be mistaken, though. I love Cignetti's swagger. I mean, he's not afraid to tell you exactly what's on his mind. He did it at halftime. They were talking, how they interview the coaches at halftime before they go in the locker room. And he was straight up. Didn't care if he got fined. 3 plays in a row, they hit my quarterback after the fact illegally. It was black and white. These weren't gray areas. No call. I mean, he'll say it during the game. I mean, he's the guy who said, hey, we're scheduling out a conference the same way the SEC does. I love that swagger. I really do. But look, what I like about both of them, even though they're different personalities, Pete, high energy, well, he used to be, still is, considering his age, he's still high energy, is the way they play, the way they approach the game, the way they coach the game. I mean, remember Big Balls Pete? Fearless. And then you got Kurt, come and get some of this Cignetti. In this game against Miami, they went for it twice on 4th and 5. They were successful both times. These big plays led to scoring drives. I mean, the second one, oh my God. 4th and 5, you're thinking, take the points, kick the easy field goal. Nope. Quarterback keeper. And Fernando Mendoza pounded it in for a score. That's another thing. These guys, I don't care if you're a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, they don't go down on first contact. They are physically tough. They want to win every single repetition. That's how you got to approach the game. That's how I want USC's players, their team, to approach the game. That type of attitude. They never quit on any play. It's amazing. You just watch. Again, I don't have a dog in this hunt. I'm not an Indiana fan. I'm not a Big Ten Conference fan. I'm a USC supporter, huge USC fan. But I can appreciate when I see good things. When I see Indiana football, I see good things. Look, I get it. They were older than Miami. They have the average age is like a BYU football team. I get it. Okay. They're still not the same athletes that Miami has. It's not like that was a young Miami team. It was a veteran squad with some of the best athletes, highest paid athletes out there. But you know what? I think the biggest difference, and this is where, age experience comes into it. Indiana doesn't beat themselves. They get off the field on defense instead of having undisciplined, unsportsmanlike conduct type of penalties. Again, it was a great game. Second half, back and forth. You got to give credit to the Hurricanes as well for making a game. They didn't quit either. You hate to see Carson Beck. He's been in college since forever. I mean, doesn't even have classes anymore, allegedly. Game ended on an interception, poor throw. But Indiana was, I think it actually confused Beck, their Miami's quarterback. He didn't see the zone coverage. Game over. Even when momentum was on Miami's side in the game, the Hoosiers just found a way to respond. Talk about going from, it's a great story. You're going from being historically one of the worst football programs to play football. Talk about Indiana. They are a basketball school. Not anymore. Not anymore. 3 years ago, the Hoosiers were 2-10. 2 years of Kurt Signetti. Now 16-0. They're dancing. I cannot wait for USC to play at Indiana later this year. I will be there. Cannot wait. Cannot wait. Got to see it happen. All right. You know what else you can't wait for? Another episode of Locked on USC. I'll be back again tomorrow with another episode. So, again, thank you for making Locked on USC your first listen. Thank you again for making the Locked on Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Don't forget, if you're listening and not watching, check out the Everydayers Club. That's available for you. Check out the link in the show's description page. So until that next episode, everyone, I think we'll be talking about Gary Patterson again because it should be announced. Maybe we'll have a special teams coach announcement. Whatever happens, this is the place to be, Locked on USC. So until then, everyone, you know what to do. And don't forget, go check out wearesc.com when you're done with Locked on USC. Lots of great written content.